Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, on Mac Sports and the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel, also on Twitter and Instagram. Like, share, comment, and please subscribe to the Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel for all the great NESSP shows. Our website is nessp.info. Check it out. Shows, info, stores, and links to their stores. I'm making it's not a New Year's resolution, Jack, but let me introduce myself. I'm Mac with your co-host, Jack Hirsch, legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, bringing you national sports with special focus on Northeast professional sports from New York, Boston, and Philly. So as I'm saying, Jack, it's not really a New Year's resolution, but I'm going to kind of go ahead and start calling or getting in touch with my family a little bit more because, as busy as we are and as enthralled we are in ourselves, there's nothing more important than family. So that's what I'm going to start doing from now on, Jack. I'm going to start doing that. And I
think it's very cool you're making a New Year's resolution in March.
Right.
Okay, I mean, that's very good. Better late than never. Yeah.
I'm slow to the table, Jack. I'm slow to the table. How you doing, Keith? And Jack, I think you got some news about speaking of family.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was going to mention it, but you kind of put it out there for me. I mean, I had a sixth grandchild, that was born last Monday, a boy, okay? But the thing about it that really made it phenomenal, it was on the 50th anniversary day of the first Muhammad Ali-Joe Frazier fight. And when you think of the chances of that happening on the 50th anniversary day, and that Ali-Frazier fight that day, March 8th, 1971, was easily one of the most impactful days of my life. It's such a special day, that March 8th, 1971, to have my daughter, one of my daughters give birth to a child on the exact 50th anniversary day. I mean, what were the odds of that happening? I had a better chance actually winning the lottery, getting a lotto ticket. I should have gotten a lotto ticket too.
Right.
Seeing who cashed it in on that day.
And congratulations.
I missed the vote on that. But I'm a rich man in a lot of other ways, in the more important ways.
Congratulations, Jack. That's great news. I'm really happy for you. And he's healthy and everything's working.
Everything is good. Everything is good.
Excellent. So, Jack, let's turn to our updates in the NBA, NHL, and some sports news. After the All-Star exhibition, the LeBron All-Stars 170 to the Durant's 150. The standings I want to take a quick look at with you because, this is supposed to be the break where people either make their move or fall off a little bit. So in the East, the 76ers and Nets in a virtual tie, followed by the Bucks, the Celtics, the Knicks, the Heat, Hornets, and the Raptors are in the top 8. In the West, the Jazz, Suns, Lakers, Clippers, Portland, Denver, San Antonio, and Dallas. So it starts locally with a bang here coming up where we have, a lot of teams from the East meeting each other. You have the Nets that are going up against, the 76ers going up against the Bulls. the Knicks at the Bucks. And the Nets acquire Blake Griffin. Now, I'm not sure how much better that's going to make them, but it is a good piece, Jack.
It is a good piece, and it's a nothing to lose piece. They can move on from him at the end of the year. How much Blake Griffin has left, that remains to be seen. He was so-so with the Detroit Pistons, but let's be honest about it. It was hard for Blake Griffin to get motivated playing for the Pistons because the Pistons were going nowhere. And when you get traded from the LA Clippers, who were a contending team during all the years Blake Griffin was there, and then going to the lowly Detroit Pistons, it's quite a come down. Not only in the team, but the environment. You're coming from sunny California to Detroit. No put down at Detroit, but the weather, isn't as good, the environment, and he was so used to being a Los Angeles Clipper. It was a culture shock to him for a while. He tried to make the best of it. It didn't quite work out. He requested a trade to the Nets. He was accommodated. He's with a championship contender, and he can do nothing but help the Nets. He certainly can't hurt them.
No doubt, no doubt. And we'll see how that affects the 76ers, who are battling us right now. And we'll have the Philly sports guy coming in a little later, and we'll talk about that with him. In the NHL scores and updates, and last night hockey, the Hurricanes beat the Predators 3-2, the Jets 4, Toronto 3, the Panthers 4, the Blue Jackets 2, Tampa beats Detroit 4-3, the Stars beat the Chicago Blackhawks 6-1. And locally, Jack, the Penguins 4, the Rangers 2, Jack Johnson and Ryan Strome, a goal apiece in the loss. The Capitals beat the Devils 5-4. Keenan, Servicen, Sharango, Vitch, and Wood, all with goals, with a goal apiece in the Capitals win. The Islanders beat the Bruins 2-1 in a shoot-off. Nelson with a goal for the Islanders. Pasternak with a goal for the Bruins. The Flyers get by the Devils. And also in a shootout at 5-4 for the Sabres. Reinhart with 2, Montour and Sheehan with a goal apiece for the Flyers. Garreau and Rivenspik, Hayes, Ian, my favorite Flyer has become, Jack, Gots to be there. Gots to be there. A goal apiece. So I love that name. That's got to be one of the best names.
Listen, some of these athletes, I'm not saying he has to change that name, but some of the athletes have to change names. You don't want to get a certain ridicule. Look, my last name is Hirsch. When I grew up, you know what all the kids called me in school? Hershey Bar. Over and over. And you laugh about it, but it gets to be a little annoying. The Buccaneers have a field goal kicker, Ryan Suckup.
Right,
okay?
right.
Nothing's the matter with the name itself, but I'm sure you hear the jokes from people, the distasteful jokes and the other things. And sometimes you kind of want to abbreviate things. I mean, your name too, Mac. They probably, find a way to joke about that.
Yes.
And, people could be a little mean-spirited, not meaning to, and joking around. And, we have fun with certain names by abbreviating them. But sometimes, you have to abbreviate your own name and beat other people to it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, listen, I'm very, what's the word for it? I laugh at what I say and what people say. Because it doesn't bother me, Jack. I got a thick skin, and if I can put up with you on the debate show, I can put up with anything.
Oh, listen, I used to, when I used to be a teacher, students would sometimes who would object to something with myself would try to kid around and get on the, they like to have fun in certain ways,
Right.
and it depends on your sense of humor. Some people it doesn't bother at all. Others it does. It depends your level of tolerance. If you truly don't care, then you're okay with anything. But if you do, you have to consider the alternatives. You mentioned the hockey scores here. Don't look now, but the Islanders are top of the NHL East. They're sixth straight win. Yeah. Sixth straight win, the Islanders. And, they won in a shootout yesterday. They're finding every way to win, winning a low-scoring game 2-1. The Rangers losing 3-2. Their scoring woes continue. But late in the game, they put on tremendous pressure on Tristan Jarry. They hit the post. Tristan Jarry had to make some sensational saves at the end of the game to conserve the 3-2 win for the Penguins. And, of course, the Flyers hung in tough, came from behind and, and beat the Sabres 5-4. The Devil game, the Devils showed a lot of heart yesterday. They came up short, losing 5-4 to the Washington Capitals in overtime, but they were losing 4-1.
Yeah.
And Lindy Ruff, the Devil coach, is very pleased with his team, and rightfully so. To get 3 goals on the Capitals in the third period to tie it up 4-4 really showed the intestinal fortitude, like a team that's not quitting. They're not going anywhere, it appears this year, the Devils, but they're building a nucleus, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, and when the Philly sports guy comes in, we'll be talking about the Flyers because they're out of the top 4 right now, but they're close to number 4. So I mean, they're within the stone throw of getting in that top 4.
And I can tell you, Mac, if you look carefully, it's also games played. Because of COVID, the schedule's thrown out of whack. In the normal schedule, when you look at the standings, the teams would have played the same amount of games, or only one less or one more. Now with COVID, you see some teams that played 3 games more than the others, and they might be a few points up in the standings. So in reality, they have those extra games, and that's the reason why they might be. So you got to look at the amount of games they played when you look at the standings as well.
That's very true. So let's get to a little bit of sports news in general, Jack. The NCAA basketball, Gonzaga enters the NCAA tournament undefeated. Now, Gonzaga has been knocking on the door for a long time, Jack. They've had some really good teams. And with the way the NCAA is structured right now, with a lot of good quality, sensational, if you want to say that word, players leaving after the first year, other teams have vaulted forward while the bigger teams have kind of fell off because they're kind of going to the NBA fast. But the smaller schools have the chemistry of players staying there. Do you think Gonzaga is the favorite to win it all?
Well, Gonzaga was given a scare yesterday by BYU. They had to come from behind to win, and that's a good thing for them going into the NCAA tournament because, Gonzaga's undefeated, and they've been dominant as well. And when a team is so dominant, they tend to relax a little. They lack that eye of the tiger, that sharpness. And that's a dangerous thing. You go into the NCAA tournament because all of a sudden you go in, you're caught off guard. You think you're automatically going to continue to roll. And this is a wake-up call. They were in danger at a certain point of losing to BYU. Ultimately, they won by 10 points. It reminds me of many years ago, this Gonzaga team of Georgetown, who had those great teams under John Thompson. They played Princeton in the NCAA tournament, and they barely squeaked by 1 point. I mean, they never expected a game like that. And this is a wake-up call for Gonzaga. They've never won the NCAA tournament, and this is as good a chance as they're ever going to have.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's see, the embattled Les Miles, Jack, got a $2 million settlement as he steps down from the head coaching job at Kansas University. This goes back to LSU and, what some comments he made to some of the players. Everybody pretty much that's been following sports knows the comments he said. He came under scrutiny there. So because of that, Kansas University kind of let him go, but, of course, with $2 million in his pocket.
I don't know all the details, whether they were justified to let him go or not. It was made at another university. What's he done since? That's what I want to know as well. What's he done to the university he's at? Did he commit a crime in the past university? Was he abusive to the point where he crossed lines he shouldn't have crossed? What's his level of remorse? I mean, I don't know all the details because this seems to be coming up every other week with a high-profile coach, where they go into his past where something happened. I just don't know in the Les Miles situation. But listen, when you walk away with $2 million, Mac, I'm not going to feel sorry for him because certain, coaches, if they can't coach again and they're given this golden parachute on their way out the door, they can get a nice vacation place somewhere and shoot golf virtually the rest of their life.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to feel as sorry for them as someone else who, has to seriously look for employment after that. But I don't know all the details with Les Miles, what went on.
So, Jack, John Zimmerman, 2002 Olympian, member of U.S. Ice Skating's Hall of Fame, has been suspended as a coach of Safe Sport for covering up and failing to report a sexual abuse of a 13-year-old female skater he coached in 2017. I think there's going to be more and more stories of this coming out in the future, Jack. I think that there are certain people that don't take this stuff seriously enough and don't report. I know times have changed and stuff like that, and these reports are coming out later. But gymnasts now skating, and there's other organizations that did that. It's just too bad, Jack.
I don't know his situation, the exact details, but I have zero tolerance for adults, coaches who are put in charge of minors and are abusive in any way, shape, or form. I just don't have any tolerance for that.
And I'm with you on that. Well, franchised tag players are starting to happen right now, Jack. And of course, the teams use this to keep them from going to other teams. And here's some of the bigger ones. The Jags keep wide receiver Robinson. Of course, Trevor Lawrence is going there, so that was a big move by them.
It gives them a target. You don't want to take away it. Yeah,
definitely. Offensive tackle Trent Williams, tagged by the 49ers, one of the best offensive tackles in the business. Of course, we know he was with the Redskins before they tagged.
Robinson, let me just go back with Jacksonville. He was I believe he was undrafted, a 7th-round draft choice. Was a pleasant surprise,
Yeah.
Jackson, great, excellent, excellent running back.
So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers keep defensive lineman Goodwin. Goodwin is one of the better linemen in the league. Aaron Jones, running back with the Packers, they franchised him, Jack. Very important part of that Green Bay offense. And Leonard Williams, defensive lineman for the Giants, got tagged after a great last year. I wasn't sure what they were going to do with him. There's it's not only just to keep him for 1 year, but it's a move for contracts coming up, Jack, with big players, so that no other team can actually come and just grab them. So it's not only just a tag because they're a great player. It also is a strategic move so that, like I said, no other team takes, like Dak Prescott, for instance, right? He's signing a big contract. It's not final yet. But
no. They franchise a player and then they have till July.
Right.
A certain date in July. I forgot the exact day to work out a longer term deal. But but if they can work out the longer term deal, worst case scenario, the player plays under the 1 year contract. And listen, Leonard Williams, it's a phenomenal deal. He's getting $19.5 million. I get sick of these players who are not in Leonard Williams' case because he wants to remain a Giant, but I get sick of these players who complain about being franchise tagged. 1 year of being franchise tagged is lifetime security. And then you can work out deals, after that. In the case of Leonard Williams, the Giants gave up some draft capital to get him from the New York Jets. And they really like him. He had a great year, and he's improving. He has a lot of upside to him. So Dave Gettleman wants him to be part of the Giant future. It's just a question of working out a deal. A couple of the teams you're talking about with the draft of franchise playing, the Packers and the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers want to keep their team together.
Yeah.
With the cap, they really have to get creative. I mean,
agree.
really got to, signing Godwin back is good. There's several other guys. They're going to have to work something out with the Packers, with Aaron Jones. Good for them. They can't antagonize Aaron Rodgers here. They're going to have to do something, give him, some additional weapons, a wide receiver on the offensive line. Because after what happened last year, I mean, all eyes are going to be on Green Bay. If you have an unhappy Aaron Rodgers, it could get ugly in Green Bay.
I don't want to get into that with you again because it'll take over the whole show. Let's bring Pags. Jamie Pags, a Philly sports guy, is backstage right now, coming on giving us some Philly updates. One of the one of the biggest following on Northeast Streaming Sports. He has a lot of thousands and thousands of followers, Jack. He really knows his Philly stuff, and maybe we'll even talk to him a little bit about franchise. Like, I didn't hear the Eagles franchise.
I don't know his reaction to the Cowboys having sacked Prescott. Deals like that do affect the Eagles one way or the other. I mean, obviously what the Cowboys, Giants, and Redskins do affect the Eagles. And so the Cowboys will at least be stable in the quarterback position, even though I wouldn't have given him that contract myself. But he is a very good quarterback, Dak Prescott.
I hope he comes back as healthy as he was when he left. You know what I mean? Like that's going to be the really important thing. I don't begrudge anybody making their money, and I'm very happy that the Cowboys gave him that type of money because he definitely. I don't think he's worth it. So it's going to strap them in certain ways somewhere down the line there. But I mean, beyond that, I hope he's able to come back healthy because, like I said, I think a healthy Dak Prescott makes the Cowboys a little bit better, and I would rather beat the Cowboys at full strength rather than at half.
I want to ask Pags this question, like an either or. I don't want to use the word meddling because that sounds insulting. Who's a more involved owner, Jeffrey Lurie or Jerry Jones?
Well, that's that. When you put the two of them on the same scale, it's Jerry Jones, by a landslide. However, you're hearing now that that Jeffrey is a little bit more. He got a little bit more fingers in this pie than you would think, which. It kind of amazed me a little bit that came out. At first I wondered why. Why did that have to come out now? And it made me believe a couple of things. One,
Jalen Hurts, you're referring to, right?
Just the fact that that Jeffrey Lurie has got say in the draft room and things like that. Like that, I felt like that this was more of a look at me over here and don't worry about what's happening over there. Like he tried to take away some of the attention away from Roseman and the coach, Sirianni. So, and for Jeffrey Lurie to come out and say, well, we're going to be building around, Jalen Hurts. Well, of course you're going to build around Jalen Hurts because you ain't got nobody else right now. So, I mean, to say that was nothing, as far as I was concerned. But it literally was like it just kind of confused me in terms of why now, unless you don't want the coach to say that. You don't want the coach to say that. It's coming right from the owner, and that just like that's again because I don't think Jeffrey Lurie is like I think that after being an owner for 25 years, you start to pick certain things up. You get gut feelings, and when you are the guy signing all the checks, sometimes your gut feelings, you want to act upon them, which is maybe what happened with Reagor last year over Jefferson. You just like, hey, I got a gut feeling about this. And, and he was the one that made that final say. Possibly. I don't know. It could have been Howie Roseman that made it. And now Jeffrey Lurie has taken some of the blame because he doesn't care if he gets yelled at or, the fans don't want him because, again, he owns the team. So he doesn't, Giants don't move for ants, and that's kind of his mentality there.
Yeah, Pags, that's a great point that I even think of because, there's a lot of owners out there that that get involved in the media. I should say a lot. There's a few that get involved in the media, and maybe they do that, and maybe Jerry Jones does that in certain circumstances to take the heat off the coach, and maybe it makes sense. You have a new coach. Your GM is kind of, I ain't going to say that he's disdained, but there's a lot of talk about, what happened to the Eagles last year. Him coming out kind of running, rough shot for these guys is a smart move, I think.
Mac's a Daniel Snyder guy, by the way.
Yeah, I love him.
Well, Daniel Snyder's is a horse of a different color, as they would say. He talk about somebody who finally got it together and was able to put the team, just finally leave the team alone enough so that they can get out of their own way. But it was, he's a whole different animal.
Jack will throw you off if you listen to him. Philly's really guy bag, so be careful with that. So anyway, let's talk a little bit more about the Eagles with the draft coming up. We have a popular draft analyst, and I don't know how he got so popular because if you look at his record, he's not the greatest. But Mel Kiper Jr. says it's a no-brainer, right? A wide receiver you guys need. LSU, Marchese, or Alabama's Smith. You've been on the show before, and you said, of course, and I agree with you 100%, that it starts in the trenches, in the line, defensive line, offensive line. The Eagles need a little help, especially in the offensive line. So what do you think? Do you think the Eagles should? I mean, these guys are very talented, Bags. I mean, you do need a big straight wide receiver. So is he right or is he wrong?
Well, I feel that if they do go wide receiver, it's acknowledging the fact that they made mistakes in the last couple of drafts. And I don't know how willing they are to do that. That's going to be how big is the ego and how much of it is going to get in the way of everyday life, because that's really what it comes down to. As you know, I am a big proponent of the trenches, on the offensive or defensive line, and that this is the perfect example where they can trade back and actually get some value for the number 6 pick. Because I feel like that they're getting a wide receiver who didn't even play a snap last year come back, because of COVID. He opted out of COVID and he came from San Francisco. He was also supposed to be really quick. And so it's like they're picking up another receiver that they just didn't have last year. So there's between all of that happening, do I think that they need another receiver? No. I feel like that they've got enough that if they were to drop everybody, which really they could probably get rid of Arcega-Whiteside because he has done nothing for the last 2 seasons, and especially since DK Metcalf is the one that continues to get, acknowledged. Although there's teams that missed on both, on DK Metcalf as well, but it's always the Eagles that kind of are eating that because they picked up a wide receiver who has done nothing. So my thought is that they trade back. They get some value from there, maybe a second-round pick along with the first round, somebody who's moving up the order in like 10 or 12 spots, and then they go with what gets them there. Again, I like the tight end. I think that the tight end could go to like 14 or 15. And I know that goes against my thought process with the offensive defensive line. However, I like the idea of the 2 tight end set. I like the idea of the rotating. Hey, Dallas Goedert in 3 years is probably going to be on his way out too. Treat him more like an asset and something that you'd be able to trade away, because ultimately they have to start to figure out a way to get under the cap in a meaningful way and not always restructure contracts and keep people for a lot longer than they need to, because they have to figure out ways to deal with the money.
I listen. I think if you're doing a rebuild, the most important thing, of course, as you said, is the offensive and defensive. You could say defensive front 7. I mean, your skilled position players. You might find a diamond in the rough. You might get a free agent. You might get a lot of things there. But if they aren't solid, you can't rebuild. There's no way to rebuild.
I don't think the Eagles are rebuilding in part because of the division that they're in. You're talking about a division that next season 8-8 might win the division. At least it's going to keep you in contention.
I disagree with that 100%, Jack. I think the Cowboys have an easy 10-6, 11-5 team with their talent.
They have that every year, and they haven't done it.
I think the Giants and the Washington Redskins, even though they got rid of Alex Smith, have taken step forward, and the Eagles have taken maybe a couple steps back. And if I was them, I sure in heck would be trying to rebuild that team through the draft and through free agency, and not be worried about skilled players.
I think reboot, not rebuild.
I don't know. Maybe you're right.
Well, and I think that the team feels that way too, though. They feel more like you do, Jack. Just that, because like I said, the offensive line is really going to be intact. Short of, the biggest difference is going to be Jason Peters isn't going to be there. It's going to be Mailata instead. And truth of the matter is, I think Mailata is going to be one of the best in this game. I think when all is said and done, he's been sleeping and everything, being tackle in the NFL since he's come into the NFL here. And I think that he's finally going to catch it. And it's, that the knowledge and the learning is going to all catch up this season. And you're going to see him probably be one of the best, blockers.
And guys, I don't know. I don't know whether public pressure plays a part in it, but I think the Eagle fan base, they need a buzz. And if Devonta Smith is there, it's hard to see them taking an offensive lineman, for example. It's just hard. I think they need that buzz.
Buzz don't win games, Jack. That's for sure.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah. So let's talk about the 76ers. You guys are back after the All-Star break. You're on road, a couple road games coming up. I took a quick peek at the power rankings, and it kind of made me chuckle a little bit. ESPN has them at third, which is respectable, but a lot of them have them at 6. And I was thinking of 5 teams that were really better than the 76ers. You could maybe say the Jazz, which you guys beat. You might say the Nets on paper may have a better team than you, and the Lakers when they're strong. The Clippers don't do it for me. So at least third or fourth, Pags. I don't understand why the 76ers are getting so much disrespect out there amongst the other experts, so-called.
I think that goes all the way back to trusting the process, thought, that they're still getting hate because they tanked for all those years. You know what I mean? To be able to get Simmons and Embiid. And I think that this is their way of being able to show it. I'm going to stick with exactly where I was, as that I thought that the Sixers were going to come out second going into the playoffs, and then they were going to represent the East. I still stick by that. I feel like that, Brooklyn is just adding too much sugar now. It's like the coffee may have been able to.
Oh, you wanted the sugar yourself? Are you kidding?
I know. I didn't want. I would not want. Blake
Let me
Griffin.
tell you what was revealing.
Blake Griffin would not have fit here, and they wouldn't have gotten along. That would have definitely soured the.
But let me tell you what was revealing too. Blake Griffin played for Doc Rivers for a lot of years with the LA Clippers. It's very interesting. He wasn't looking to reunite with his old coach. And in most cases, the player wants to reunite with his coach, especially when his coach is the coach of a, championship contender. But Blake Griffin preferred going to the Nets rather than going back with his old coach. What do you make of that?
I've heard that they don't talk at all. That it was not very friendly between the two of them.
Well, why not?
Who knows? I don't know. I'm not an LA fan. So Clippers fan, so I can't tell you really why that was. That's really between the two of them. Truth of the matter is, though, is that sometimes players and coaches don't get along, and I can imagine that. My thought is that he probably expected more to come from Blake Griffin and pushed him and pushed him and pushed him. Probably gave him a lot of tough love, as you will, thinking that Blake was an all-star for a long time and just probably thought that he could give more, that there was more in the tank of Blake. And Blake probably thought that, he didn't have any more. You know what I mean? The egos got in the way or something of that nature. So I can't speak for their relationship. I just know that, it was as telling as it needed to be. They didn't want to work together again. And it was like one didn't say, hey, why don't you try to come back? The other one didn't say, hey, I would like to go with you. So that's really on a both sides type of thing. And so it doesn't really surprise me at all that and the fact that he went to the Nets isn't surprising, but I think that's again they just put too much sugar in that coffee now, and that's going to make it sickly sweet, and it's not going to do well. Oh, too many egos.
Well, if you think about it, Pags, I don't think Griffin fits in with the 76ers anyway. I mean, you've got a good front court as it is. I mean, you're talking Embiid, Harris, and Simmons really is more of a small forward than he is a guard. And the Nets don't have a front court, really. I mean, if you think about it, they got a lot of guards, and Durant hasn't even played, really. I guess he's considered a forward. But I think the fit is better with the Nets than it is with the 76ers anyway. So, whether there's personal problems there or not, I don't know. But the fit, I think, is better with the Nets than it would be with the 76ers. What, is Griffin going to come off the bench? I don't know how you're going to use him. Griffin could probably start for the Nets. So I think that has a lot to do with the fit also.
I agree.
Who's got a better front court than the 76ers in the league right now? I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, Embiid, Harrison, and Simmons. I don't know if any of you guys can think of a better front court.
Not at all. I think that's really and really that's the best defensive team. So that's where I think that's going to make the biggest difference. Is that this year amongst everything else, defense is going to win the championship. And that's how I feel about it. That keeping these guys to like 100, 110 points is going to win you a lot more games if you're scoring, especially if you're scoring 120 points a game. And that's what happens in the playoffs, is that defense seems to go bye-bye. And as long as the Sixers are able to keep these games to around the score of 100, that they're going to win most of them. And I think that's going to really come into play, especially because the Nets are used to just scoring points. They have to outscore somebody because they're not playing defense. And that's where the Sixers are really going to have an advantage, being able to beat these teams that are supposedly above us in the power rankings.
I get the feeling it's championship or bust for the Sixers this year. If they don't make it at least to the finals, I think Embiid wants out. That's the feeling I get.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think he loves being in Philadelphia. He sees what happens when people win championships here. They get statues. He wants a statue.
He also sees the organization part ways with Jimmy Butler, who would be a major difference maker if he was still with the Sixers. Major.
Yeah, but that was Jimmy Butler who didn't want to stay. I mean, he chose Miami over Philadelphia. Well, when you're looking at places to live, Miami's a little bit of a better spot if you're just looking for temperatures and, going to the beach and doing that type of stuff, where you just don't have that here in Philly. He was a great player here, but he didn't want to be here. And you could tell, that was the way it was. They tried to get past. Hey, if it bounced a different way, and they wound up going up against the Bucks instead of Toronto, we could have won that series and could have very easily beat that Warriors team. You know what I mean? With all the injuries that they had. So, but that's shoulda, coulda, woulda. You know what I mean? And had they won that championship, would he have stayed? Possibly. Or could have just said, hey, I was going to get my money anyways. They pay me for 4 years. They paid me for 5 years. The max contract, it's not going to matter because it's the max. So,
yeah, to me, there's so many different things with the way people, the players can move around now. It's kind of is a little bit sad that you can't really be a fan of a team anymore that was built from the ground up like it used to be. To me, the 76ers remind me a little bit. Now, I'm not going to put them in that category yet of the Celtics. The Celtics had the best front three in the game at one time, and they went up against a lot of teams, and they slowed the ball down. They kind of played good defense. They had a great. I mean, you can't compare any of the 76ers yet to those Celtics players of the past. But it's a young team, and if they stick together, I mean, I can see really big things for Philadelphia in the next few years. I really can. So hopefully they keep together and they do something. All they need is a little bit more guard. A little more guard. Curry's okay. Is maybe a little better than okay. A little bit more there, Pags. I think you got a championship team there. Let's talk about the Phillies really quick. I mean, I know it's only spring training. We'll be talking about him a lot more when the season starts. There's this kid, Mickey Moniak. Am I saying it right?
Moniak. Mickey Moniak.
Yes. 22-year-old center fielder that's turning a lot of heads. You guys are pretty deep at center field. He's up there kind of battling right now. He's a good batter. He's a good fielder. They're thinking about putting him down at AAA to give him a 4 years worth. But why not bring the kid up? Why not let him have a shot at playing? To me, there's such a thing as protecting kids too much, and kind of drowning them down there in the minors, So, man, if I was them, if he is that good and he can compete with the center fielders you got anymore, I'd give him a fair shot back.
Well, it's putting them in a very unique type of situation because the other center field, they're not very deep at center is the thing. And they've been platooning out different guys that they want to have up here that don't really have a spot in the infield. They're like, oh, well, let's try him and let's try him.
Okay.
But the biggest issue that they run into is Odubel Herrera. And a few weeks ago, when I was down at the Super Bowl, I mentioned him like he's there, he's back, and he was working out with the Phillies. And ultimately, he's having a good enough spring that he should be the starting center fielder. Now, the way to get around that, if you don't want to have him be your starting center fielder, is to use Mickey Moniak. Like, all right, we're going to have you come up, kid, because now it takes away all of the hoopla of him making the squad, Odubel Herrera, because he's got a lot of baggage that he's carrying around with him right now. And we talked about this even on my show the other day. We addressed this because Philadelphia has got one of the morning sports talk shows is being very vocal about not wanting to root for the team if he's on the team. Yeah. And it starts a little hoopla of what's going on. Now, I'm not saying, hey, what he did is 100% wrong and that he has to really atone for that. And there's different ways that you can do that publicly, that you can start to, try to better the situation. The problem is that as you're starting to do that, it becomes a distraction to the team and to the player. So what can he do well? Can he atone for his past sins, or can he play baseball? And that's where this kind of comes into play. It's going to be interesting how the Phillies act here, because I think that there's going to be a backlash if Odubel Herrera does make the team and does come north for opening day and is on the big league roster. And their only saving grace to having him not there is Mickey Moniak.
Yeah. Well, the kid is opening a lot of eyes over there. So let's get to your Flyers. Right now they're sitting in fifth, 1 point behind the Bruins, 7 points behind the first place Islanders. They beat the Sabres last night in a shoot-off. Is there anything that you see that the Flyers need to improve in? Maybe a trade, maybe some kind of new strategy, Pags? Or do you think they're fine the way they are, and as the season ends, they'll be sitting there in the top four?
I think that they definitely need to have some help. And I feel that it needs to start with defense. Their defense is lackluster at best. And I feel like there are the back half. I mean, you have Provorov, who skates about 30 minutes a game now. So he takes up he's one side of the defense for the half of a game. And between that other half of the game, you have either, Ghost, Gostisbehere. Obviously, I heard, listen to you say got to be here.
Yes.
So, and he's actually played a lot better this year. But I feel that they have had problems, really. I mean, Gustafsson has not been as, the player I want him to be. I wish he wouldn't give the puck up as much. I wish that when he did give the puck up, he had more sense of urgency. I feel like that the Flyers do a lot of puck watching when they're around the net. And that's the fourth goal from Buffalo yesterday was a prime example. TK, instead of having the man, was watching the puck, and It went out in front, and then you could see by the look on his face, he's like, I missed that one. That was my bad. And that's it's a little bit of a mentality that's crept in with them, and that needs to get going because they're leaving their goalies out to hang. I mean, I know that Carter Hart's going through a little bit of a rough stance, and you have to play through this. I mean, even Martin Brodeur in his third and fourth season had rough patches. So I'm not. The world's not crashing in on me saying, hey, that he's still not the franchise goalie. He absolutely is, but he's going to have some rough times, and that's part of the growing of being a professional player. But that their penalty kill and their power play is pathetic, and that goes back to coaching. And they need to start to really fix that. But that also goes to their odd man rushes are horrible. I mean, let's say and Couturier, I mean, Coots, he went in on a breakaway and then just couldn't figure out what to do. He made up for it because he scored in the shootout. But I mean, it was.
Let me ask you something, Pags, to draw a little comparison. In football, when we talk wide receivers, we talk how quick they are, okay? In hockey, we never tend to talk how quick skaters are. And at least to my naked eye last year when the Flyers lost to the Islanders in the playoffs, the Islanders seemed to be beating them to the puck much of the time, just skating a little quicker. Is it possible the Flyer players some of them just don't skate quick enough, don't have that natural burst of speed? Is that a factor?
Yes. So there was two things I thought that the Islanders did really well in that series last year. They worked the boards very well, and they knew that that's how the Flyers like to dump in, and the puck would roll around, and that they were a little bit faster. To your naked eye, that was apparent. They were just getting outbeat to the pucks. Now this year, I feel like one of the strengths of the Flyers has been the forecheck. That once they get the puck in and deep, that they are able to weigh on the guys and get that puck out and then start to be able to make a play with it. And I feel that that's a big difference from last year because what was happening, they were dumping it in and the Islanders were able to get the puck out fairly quickly. So speed is always going to be able to if you start weighing on guys, they're going to be able to start to get slower and such. But if you're going to leave them open, they're going to be able to skate circles around you. And that's kind of what happened with the Islanders last year. And like I said, I think that in the bubble itself, that things started to just, the guys started to get tired, maybe a little bored. And if you weren't 100% focused, you weren't going to win. And even though they brought it to 7 games, it was still apparent. Like I thought that the Islanders should have won it in Game 6. They had a couple opportunities that they missed the net and such like that. So I feel like that, going backwards a little bit here, that this is still Tampa Bay's cup to lose. The Tampa Bay is going to be the team, and everybody's going to have to get up to that point. And the fact that we're playing only in division, it's like the Islanders right now are in the top, but that's also because they have been feasting a lot on the Sabres and the Rangers and, the dreck of the teams. They haven't had the chance to go up against Pittsburgh. They haven't beaten each other up a little bit. They haven't beaten each other up in Washington either. I mean, we've played a couple games against the Sabres, but we haven't done anything really against the Rangers. We played 2 games, the Devils 2 games. So those are the teams where we need to make sure we hold serve and we win those games, because ultimately, I mean, right now we still hold 2 games in hand. So if we get 4 points puts us in second place, I believe, right now. So that's really what I'm more concerned about. It's that this was game 23. We have 33 more games left to go before the end of this season. They have a lot of games in short amount of time. I mean, that's what killed them, I think, against Washington the other night, that I happened to be at the game. It was so awesome just to be able to be at these games a little bit and just to have that type of excitement, even how 3,000 people make a difference, especially at the moment that the referee makes a bad call. So it's just those types of things. the players kind of feed off of that a little bit, but they were exhausted. You could just tell that they lost it. The tank was about empty the third period on Saturday against Pittsburgh, where they had a baseball series out there. You know what I mean? It's being stuck in one city for a week again wears on you. You know what I mean? It's just like where you can't do nothing. They can't go out anywhere in Pittsburgh because everybody will recognize them. So you're stuck in a hotel room.
So Pags, are we talking that maybe there needs to be a coaching change?
Well, I definitely think as a big a fan as I am of Ian LePerrier, I think that it's time for him to move on and get somebody to do some special teams coaching. They need a change of philosophy. I don't think that what they're doing right now is working. I don't think that I still have to trust in AV right now. He's been able to get to the dance with a couple of different teams. I fully expect that he's coaching is going to be able to get them there. And the only coach that I feel that matches him in this league right now, or at least in this division, is Trotz from the Islanders. It's just that I think that Trotz really kind of trumps him a little bit, just knows how to coach against him. But I think other than that, AV is really the coach of this division, and that all of these problems can get fixed. So, and they've got some time to do it. And it's not good to start clicking now and, lose it as you get towards the end. You want to start clicking right around the middle of April.
Well,
so this is the time to get these fixed.
Tell Tampa Bay that, Pags, because they're clicking all the time. Pags, thanks for coming in again. We enjoy having you on all the time. You know Philly sports like no one else. You're great at what you do.
Real quick, Mac, I just have to give a big congratulations to the Drexel Dragons that are going to be at the dance. They won their tournament yesterday. And since we were talking NCAA basketball, it's not going to be just Villanova in this dance. Drexel's going to make an appearance too. They're probably going to be a 14 seed or maybe even in that play-in game. But congratulations.
I hope they enjoy their strong cup of coffee.
Hey, listen, Drexel has won a couple games in this tournament before.
Never know.
It's always interesting to me how 13 seeds and 14 seeds do much better when they have a better record. When I make my tournament bracket, when I see a 13-12 or a 13 seed have a much better record than the team that they're playing against, I usually go with the team with the better record because although that the team's in a better conference or whatever, usually that team with the better record is just unproven, because they haven't played those teams. So it's great that they're there. It's fantastic that that's great for the program, the school, the community. Great story.
Before I let you go, Pags, Big Joe over there at the Safety and Sports Writer Show has sent out a challenge with the brackets. He wants to see who would win between the shows on Northeast Streaming Sports. So if you want to get involved in that little challenge with the Safety and Sports Writer, you're welcome to it. I don't know. I'm not as big into the bracket as some people, but I might fool around. Maybe me and Jack will fool around and submit our bracket, and who knows? So
I'm gonna need to get help from my daughter so that she says, for these two teams I don't like. Here's the color jersey. She picks the right color. Right. I tell you, sometimes that wins a lot of the time. So
it sure does, man. I mean, I know one woman put out that she was looking at the brackets and she said, well, a Blackhawk beats a Cardinal, so I'm taking the Blackhawks. And
I go 1/16, 2/15. When I start going down the numbers and they level out, then I try to make more of an educated choice.
Yeah, a couple years ago, Virginia would have been a bad pick then.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true.
Well, we said with Gonzaga, you got to be careful these top seeds as far as complacency, because those first round games could be dangerous for some of them.
One and you're out. One injury, one missed shot.
Yeah, it's scary. Very scary.
That's the great thing about it, too. Pags, again, thank you. Any new shows coming up, new dates for any of your shows coming up before I let you go?
I'm not going to be on It's Game Day Live because I'm going to be at these games here in the next couple of days. So it's and I'm waiting today. A little bit later, we're going to be going to our first Sixers game as well. So you're going to see me doing more videos rather than doing my Game Day Lives because it's hard to do it how to do game day lives at the stadiums. So
Tags, I'm busting at the seams to talk about some of your shows, but we'll let it go and we'll talk about that later.
yeah, I'm not bringing that up. That's not a sports show, so I'm leaving that behind.
All right, Tags. Have a great day, my friend. We'll check you out next week. All right.
See you next
Guys,
week.
thank you.
So there you go. The Pags, the Philly sports guy, the man that knows everything about Philly sports. Jack, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back on the other side. We still got a lot of stuff to go.
Well, I didn't have a chance to ask Pags, so I'll maybe ask him next week. The Philly Museum put an Ali Frazier statue up. They're going to be unveiling it. Yeah,
That's
I'm curious
excellent.
about that.
That's excellent, Jack. I mean, we got that fight of the century will live on forever and ever, Jack. It's just one of those
What
things.
a show we had last Sunday, Max.
Oh, my God.
For those people who didn't hear it, look it up. Go to YouTube or wherever and catch the replay of that show. I mean, it's very, it's timely. Just, it's last Sunday. You have to catch that show.
Yeah, one of the better streaming shows around. I mean, that show was unbelievable. It's called The Fight of the Century. It's a Northeast Streaming Sports.
The best show anywhere on the 50th anniversary of the Ali Frazier fight.
So, folks, we'll be on right after these few messages. Still a lot of sports to get to. Please come back and join us. We'll be right back.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Infoline. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's gonna be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he gonna know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on live 8 to 10 a.m. Wednesday through Sunday. So if you're out and about and you can't get to our show, Jack, we are also on a lot of different outlets as far as your listening goes too. We're on Spotify, we're on iHeartRadio, we're on iTunes, we're also on Pandora. So we're on a lot of different outlets, folks, not counting our Facebook page, and also on YouTube channel for Northeast Streaming Sports. So we're glad to have you with us, folks. We just had Jamie Pags, the Philadelphia sports guy, on and giving us all our Philly updates, and we love having him on every week, Jack.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All the time with Pax. I mean, he can out-talk me even.
Yeah, he can. He can.
But it's quality stuff that comes out of his mouth.
It's very true. I mean, he's got a lot of great insight, speaking from the Philly perspective, and that's why we love having him on every week. So
when you think of certain cities, Mac, some cities have it much better than others. I mean, you look at the four major sports. I mean, we have two champions in Los Angeles, the Lakers and the Dodgers, and two in Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers and the Lightning.
Right.
And even in Tampa, you have the Rays who went to the World Series. So they're like a terrific sports town. I mean, you're never going to have it like so good. And even in Los Angeles, outside of the Lakers, you got the Clippers over there. You have the Rams, contending teams. So great sports towns.
Yeah, they are. They're very much are. So, Jack, let's see if I can. Oh, Jack is at it.
Yeah. Ignore that. That's got to be technical glitch. Yeah.
Okay. Jack, every week, come Wednesday. We have our wall of Fame, which right now says Hall of Fame, which is wrong. We have a Wall of Fame because we don't own the Hall of Fame, Jack. So, but we have a Wall of Fame, folks, over at nessp.info, where we put people from the past who have meant so much to their sport. And this week, we went to football. We got our football page, and the first inductee to our Wall of Fame on our football page, Jack, is the great Jim Brown. And Jim Brown, there was way too many awards to put on there to fit in that little 200-character spot. Jim Brown was a trans, they talk about a trans football player that goes into generations. And Jim Brown is one of those players, Jack, one of the arguably the greatest running back of all time as far as a runner goes. In the short, people don't remember that the NFL was not always 16 games. At one time it was 14. I even think before that it was less games, Jack. I'm not exactly sure. But Jim Brown, in his short time, and he did retire while he still could have been playing a lot more football, was unbelievable. The man with strength, power, speed, as we all know, anybody that has followed football, most valuable players. Player has more. He was the NFL Rookie of the Year, and like I said, has so many awards. He was kind of the running back that stood out when the running game was big in the NFL, Jack.
Well, one of the awards that Jim Brown should have, and he doesn't, is the Heisman. But because of the racial discrimination at that time, it was never given that award that should have been due him. Great running back in Syracuse. Then he came to the NFL. Jim Brown is an athlete ahead of his time, okay? Ahead of his time. Fast forward Jim Brown to this era right now, he'd be absolutely great. But especially when he played, when the players were a little smaller, they'd have to gang tackle Jim Brown. There was nearly no such thing as tackling him one-on-one. I mean, he was a one-man crew, and the toughest linebackers, Ray Nitschke, Sam Huff, they feared Jim Brown. They feared him. I mean, normally it's the opposite way. The offensive players going to fear the defensive player, the middle linebacker coming at him full force, trying to tackle him. But Jim Brown would take it right to the linemen, the defensive players. He would take it to him. He'd be the one being physical. He would run over them. I mean, he only played 9 years in the NFL. It would have been longer, but what had happened, Jim Brown had other interests as well. Besides being an advocate for racial equality, Jim Brown was a movie star. He was in demand. A good-looking man, great athlete. They wanted him to play parts where he'd be running because he was so quick, but there would be meaningful parts in movies. And he told Art Modell, the Cleveland Brown owner, I have to report late to training camp. And at that time, they didn't understand. They told Jim Brown they were going to fine him if he'd be late to camp. And Jim Brown was a defiant individual. Yeah. Even though it would be fair to fine him, Cleveland didn't want to give him any slack. So Jim Brown settled it his own way. He said, I'm just retiring. Case closed. So this way you can't find me. I'm going to make movies. And he retired after 9 years. A ton of records. Because he didn't play those additional years, his records ultimately got broken. But great play. And if you ask most people today, who was the greatest single running back of all time, the majority would still say Jim Brown.
Yeah, and I mean, he was involved not only in movies, he was involved in other sports. Let's start with football first.
Mention the other sports. Lacrosse.
Yeah. Yep.
Lacrosse. He was arguably the greatest lacrosse player of all time.
Track and field. I mean, everything, Jack. I mean, the man was just an athlete. And for a defensive coach to actually set up a defense to stop one man, one running back, Tom Landry, the defensive genius. I mean, before there was Bill Belichick, there was Tom Landry. And Tom Landry set up the 4-3 defense to stop Jim Brown, period. And that's what, to play the defensive lineman in gaps and to let the middle linebacker roam free, because Jim Brown, if you didn't close those gaps, would run up through there with power and speed like nobody else. And Tom Landry's the only one that had limited success with that 4-3 defense.
Also, Mac, Jim Brown retired right before the Super Bowl came into existence, but he was part in 1964 of an NFL championship team when his Cleveland Browns shut out Johnny Unitas' Baltimore Colts 27-0 in the NFL championship game. And then the following year, the Browns lost to the Packers in the NFL championship game. And I believe Jim Brown retired after that. That was his last season.
Yeah. So, I mean, and the Cleveland Browns in the old, in the old AFL,
Well, they were the NFL. They were the NFL.
Well, sorry. They were with Paul Brown.
Right.
Right, with Paul Brown as their head coach and Otto Graham as their quarterback. The defense was good, but man, Jim Brown was unbelievable as far as
Jim Brown's quarterback was actually Frank Ryan, a good workman-like quarterback, and Cleveland had well-balanced teams. Jim Brown played for good teams. Don't misunderstand me. But football isn't like, let's say, basketball. As great as Jim Brown was, one player could only make so much of a difference, for an NFL team.
A good point with the quarterback, because Graham was before Jimmy Brown. So let's get to one of my other favorite things that we do. We try to do it every day, folks, and we test out Jack's knowledge of sports in general. And normally, he's always on if he doesn't have the correct answer, he's all around it. So
I fake it pretty well if I don't have the correct answer.
Yes, sir. You have a shot at this one, Jack. That's for sure, because it's fairly recent, and it's a question that you can get. So, Jack, for today's trivia question, What Minnesota Viking player was Rookie of the Year in 2007?
Why am I drawing a blank? 14 years ago, Rookie of the Year. Why can't you take me back to Chuck Foreman's time? No, not Randy Moss's time. Oh boy, that's after. I think I'm stumped here, Mac. I'm having a brain cramp. What Minnesota Viking player? I got to go back 14 years to the draft. Man, I bet a bunch of our viewers have this answer that I don't.
Yeah.
I'm having a brain cramp, Mac. 14 years ago, Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the Year. I'm having a brain cramp. I don't have it, Mac.
Okay, so in 2007, the Minnesota Vikings drafted a guy by the name of Adrian Peterson, Jack.
Oh, I mean, unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, an obvious answer, one of the all-time great running backs.
Yes,
obvious answer. Somehow, with Adrian Peterson, I didn't link him. I mean, he's still in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still, playing. And,
he's moving up the charts.
Yeah.
He's moving up the charts, but that's more or less because
that was a slam dunk I missed. Adrian Peterson, one of the all-time great running backs. And, drafted number 7 overall in the draft that year when they drafted him. Number 7 overall pick. Yeah.
That is true. And again, a great, powerful back with some breakaway speed. And, he's still playing today. Of course, he's not what he used to be.
Well, he had the Achilles injury. He went to the Washington Redskins. Right. He was there a couple of years, then dealt to the Detroit Lions. And, a veteran player like him is still productive, but just glad to be in the league, not being overly picky. You can't be picky to only want to go to a winner. And let's see what he means with the Lion rebuild situation. But if Adrian Peterson has to be a featured back, then the Lions, have trouble this year. But he could still kind of be productive. Guys like him and Frank Gore, like a fine wine. They keep going on and on. I think Frank Gore announced his retirement, didn't he? With the Jets, or has he not? I'm not sure.
I haven't heard nothing that he has, Jack. So maybe you're right. I haven't read nothing where he's.
But the Hall of Fame awaits Adrian Peterson, first ballot Hall of Famer. He had some issues at Minnesota, off the field issues, but he kind of denies the accusations, and the league didn't suspend him. So, we kind of have to let it go unless more comes out about it.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, he is definitely. He should be a first ballot Hall of Famer when it comes his time, Jack. So let's get to. We did our updates in the beginning, but you have some updates that you have that I might not have had, Jack. So we call this Jack's updates, where he mentions some things in the world of sports that wasn't covered in the beginning. Jack, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, small little tidbits. They're not like big news, but they're worth exploring. When Kawhi Leonard was with the San Antonio Spurs, he was one of the few star players who for some reason didn't get along that great with the coach Greg Popovich. As you recall, they won an NBA championship, and Kawhi Leonard was the MVP with the San Antonio Spurs, finals MVP. And the Spurs wanted to keep him in the worst way because he's a great talent, obviously. And then he went to the Toronto Raptors, and they won an NBA title. And he was finals MVP with the Raptors as well. And he took a leave of absence, Kawhi Leonard, from San Antonio. They questioned him. The relationship just was frayed, fell apart. Now, Greg Popovich is coaching the men's team for the Olympics in Tokyo, assuming it comes off. And Kawhi Leonard says he'll play for Coach Pop.
Yeah.
Okay. And in this day and age, not all NBA players are thrilled to play in the Olympics. they'd rather have time off, a number of them. But it's interesting to note that Kawhi Leonard is playing for his old coach, Greg Popovich, which is nice to see. Also, the Tennessee Titans are releasing cornerback Malcolm Butler.
Right.
Now, Malcolm Butler is always going to be famous in Super Bowl and especially Patriot history because he intercepted that pass that Russell Wilson threw at the end of the game. Russell Wilson never should have thrown the pass for Seattle. And when they lost to New England in the Super Bowl at the end of the game, that got intercepted. They just should have handed the darn ball off to Marshall Lynch. And the Seattle Seahawks would have won their second consecutive Super Bowl. But Malcolm Butler made maybe the most famous single play in Super Bowl history, more famous than the helmet catch, because Malcolm Butler's play, saved the Patriots. Unexpectedly, he intercepted Nace pass, and New England wins the game at the end when the ball was on the 1 yard line. Then Malcolm Butler in another Super Bowl, it's what he didn't do. When Bill Belichick didn't play him against the Philadelphia Eagles, right before the game, Bill Belichick tells Malcolm Butler, you're not playing. Okay, you're playing only on some special teams. And it was a shock. And we never know the full story, but we do know this. The Eagles torched the New England secondary. And even though Tom Brady himself threw for over 500 yards, it wasn't enough. Had Malcolm Butler been in that game, it may, that may have been the difference maker. Maybe New England wins, that Super Bowl as well.
Hey,
we'll
Jack,
never know.
Jack, let me stop you here with those two bullet statements you threw out there. First of all, it is interesting that maybe his absence makes the heart grow fonder when it comes between Popovich and that situation there with with Kawhi wanting to go play for him. I mean, they at the time, as everybody knows, when you're entangled in something, it may seem bad or maybe unworkable. But sometimes when you leave that situation, you look back at it and say, something? That wasn't really as bad as I thought it was. That's a man doing his job. I was trying to do my job, and it just didn't mesh. So not really surprised that he wants to go play for Popovich, especially, in that situation. So I think that's a situation of absence makes the heart kind of grow fonder. And as far as Butler goes, do you think he has any more left in the tank, Jack? I mean, they released him.
Well, listen, Tennessee's letting him go in part because he's a cap casualty, but he's had some productive years for the Tennessee Titans. And Malcolm Butler is going to be a perfect fit for a team contending for Super Bowl, a veteran presence who's been around, and it's going to be interesting where he winds up, but it's going to be to a team with a lot of cap room, and he'll demand a somewhat decent contract. I do believe there's a lot in the tank, with Malcolm Butler still. It's funny, at the end of that Super Bowl where he intercepted the pass, I saw like a clip. The NFL Network played that old Super Bowl game before the recent one. And the game's over and the players are meeting one another. And Tom Brady goes over to Malcolm Butler and he says, Malcolm, are you kidding me? That play.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like funny in that way. Now, the thing with Kawhi Leonard and Greg Popovich, it doesn't mean all is well there necessarily. Mac, you've probably worked for bosses in your life who, if you had a chance to do it over again, you wouldn't do anything for them. You don't like them. You don't feel they're truly good people. And you've had some you'd run through a wall for. True. It all really depends. And maybe Kawhi Leonard wants to play in the Olympics enough. Maybe the Olympics mean a lot to him. You never know. I just think in this day and age, the relevancy of the Olympics to NBA players isn't that great. It's unfortunate. You would think they'd want to run through a wall themselves just to be on the team. It would mean so much to them, but they have such a tough schedule, with the traveling and all. And I know they get paid extremely well for that. Obviously, we would all do it in their spot for the type of money that they're making. That when they have some downtime, they're not getting paid for the Olympics, and it could be a bit of a grind for some of them. You know, they'd rather spend the time with their families and just regroup for the next season. But in any event, it's nice to see Kawhi Leonard kind of reunited with his old coach in some way. Also, listen, baseball-wise, with the Yankees, Mac, how big a blow do you think it is? Zach Britton is having elbow surgery, you know, on his left elbow, and he's going to be out till about mid-season. And he's the Yankees' primary setup man. I mean, it is a blow for the Yankees. It's better it happens early in the year because they get him back around mid-season, and, you know, then he could help the rest of the way. But it is a blow.
Well, I was just going to say that, Jack, that it's good to happen now instead of near the end of the season where it may affect their chances of going to, you know, the World Series. So if there is a bright spot, it's a bad situation. But if a bright spot is to be had, it's that it happened now. Definitely.
Right. And Paul, and also the NBA Hall of Fame finalists were listed. Okay. And I'm going to tell you something. In all due respect to the other players who are good players, there's a difference between a Hall of Famer and an outstanding player. Okay. And people tend to want to put players in the Hall of Fame who are not type of mortals. The only name I can see in the group who I can feel comfortable putting in the Hall of Fame amongst the finalists is Paul Pierce. Paul Pierce was a great player. Was he an all-time great? No. But you could put Paul Pierce on any team in there, and he would have a tremendous impact. Now, I saw a couple of other names that people are going to feel should be Hall of Famers. They don't quite cut it for me. Chris Bosh was a heck of a player. If you put him in the Hall of Fame, I can live with that. Don't misunderstand me. But Chris Bosh, to me, is the equivalent of what Andy Pettitte was for the Yankees. I could live with Andy Pettitte being in the Hall of Fame, but he's not a Hall of Famer. Bernie Williams wasn't a Hall of Famer. Jorge Posada's not a Hall of Famer. But I can understand putting guys like that in there. It wouldn't be disgraceful if they were put in there. And that's how I feel about Chris Bosh, a heck of a good player. Same thing with Chris Webber. Terrific player, a 5-time All-Star. I don't quite look at him as being of Hall of Fame caliber. I just don't. But people see these names, why they aren't in the Hall of Fame and so on. And Paul Pierce is the one guy who I'll vote, I would vote for. The others, if I had to get the best of the rest, then they could get my vote. But if I didn't have to vote beyond Paul Pierce, I'm not sure, I'd vote for the other guys unless they were the only ones basically left standing and someone had to be put in.
Well, doesn't it always kind of come down to opinion, Jack, when you think about it? I mean, if you think about it, your idea of the Hall of Famer and maybe another writer's idea of a Hall of Famer or another person who's voting, I mean, what do they hold in the highest regard to get in the Hall of Fame? Is it because he's, a great defender plus has some offense? Is it because he was great for his team at that time when they went to championships? I mean, there's a lot of different thoughts on what makes a Hall of Famer a Hall of Famer. I mean, there's no cut and dry thing. Paul Pierce is a no-brainer to me. I agree with you.
Great players, truly great players. Those are the Hall of Famers. Okay, a step further. Truly great players who had truly great careers.
Right.
Chris Webber was a great player. When you talk about a truly great career, it's a legendary type career. I mean, making 5 All-Star teams is great, but is he truly a Hall of Fame? I'll tell you, the guys who are playing today who are no-brainers for the Hall of Fame, okay? I'm going to miss some names, but obviously LeBron James goes in a snap of the finger. Kevin Durant will go in a snap of the finger. Steph Curry just has to play, a couple of more years. He goes in a snap of the fingers, as far as I'm concerned. Then there are other guys as well, like him or not, but James Harden is a Hall of Famer. Okay, should go in. Kawhi Leonard, I feel, is just about there, with his 2 finals MVPs. And then you get some other names who I'm not overly enthusiastic about. And I'll give you a name like a guy like a Paul George. I don't look at him as a Hall of Famer. But people would say if Paul George retired in the year 2, he should be there. His career is going to have to take an upward swing for that. Russell Westbrook, they're going to point to all his stats, the triple-doubles, say, oh, he's definitely a Hall of Famer. I don't quite look at it that way, with his career accomplishments and all. And certain guys you feel are going to get there, like a Jimmy Butler who keeps playing. But there's, sometimes I think they should set a Super Hall of Fame up in the regular Hall of Fame. The Super Hall of Fame should be for the truly all-time greats like the Big O, Oscar Robertson, Bob Cousy, Jerry West, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Dr. J, a Super Hall of Fame, the guys who are in beyond the shadow of a doubt, where you'd have to be a complete fool to argue against their inclusion. Then they're the guys who get in. Same thing in baseball. The Hall of Fame, to me, originally should be made up for Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Mike Trout when it's this time to get in. Those are Super Hall of Famers. And then you got guys like Paul Molitor in there, who doesn't even compare to the others. Is he worthy of being in the Hall of Fame? Yeah, I suppose the way the Hall of Fame is set up. Okay? And now we're talking about the Keith Hernandez's to give him another look. The way the Hall of Fame is set up today and with who's getting in, I all of a sudden feel Keith Hernandez, when we give him another look, is worthy of getting in. But he's not a Super Hall of Famer. Not a Super Hall of Famer by, in any way, shape, or form. But the Hall of Fame standards, I feel, in all sports have been a bit lessened, where a very good player who's had a lot of years gets in. And I agree with Phil Rizzuto once said, it really should be reserved for the immortals.
Well, what happened too, Jack, is that you'll have people in the Hall of Fame, whether football, baseball, basketball, whatever, and their stats for that time were great, but they've long been broken and have long been surpassed. So, for instance, Joe Namath is in the Hall of Fame. Joe Namath's stats are not as good as some of the quarterbacks that aren't in the Hall of Fame, even though he did something that was, that helped bring the two leagues together. As a quarterback, statistically, Terry Bradshaw is another one. Statistically,
he's in the Hall of Fame, Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah, but statistically, Jack, they may question compared to interceptions and all the other. But all I'm saying, Jack, is that different eras have different records, and I think that should be taken into consideration.
Oh no, absolutely, Matt.
What I'm saying, Jack, if you let me finish the thought, is that Joe Namath, you can't compare Joe Namath right now to say, let me just throw a quarterback that might make the Hall of Fame. Let's go with maybe a Eli Manning. All right, Eli Manning to me, statistically, might be a little bit better than Joe Namath. Might be. It's close. But Joe Namath was a guaranteed Hall of Famer back there because of different eras. I mean, there was different things that they had to do, different rule changes, different things that, that the game evolved. So when they say, well, he has better statistics, say, than Joe DiMaggio, that really shouldn't be taken into account. It should be taken into account, to me, the era they're playing in, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely. You're 100%, Mac. You're so correct. At the time Joe Namath played, that's what you have to look at. Right. He was considered the best quarterback in the NFL when he was in his prime. In general, he was considered the best at a certain point.
Right.
And Joe Namath, I can make an argument. He's the most famous play in NFL history. I can make that argument, I think.
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
I can, you know, the NFL Network did a thing, the greatest characters in football history, and Namath was number one.
Sure.
Namath was more famous than anyone else. I mean, come on, when you look at his level of fame as well, what he accomplished, you know, on the field, what he meant to the game, how can you not put Joe Namath in the Hall of Fame?
Right.
I think Eli Manning's a Hall of Famer.
Right,
I hope
right.
he gets in. He engineered two of the greatest comebacks in Super Bowl history, two-time Super Bowl champion. And Eli Manning had an Iron Man streak of
Sure.
playing all those consecutive games. I mean, Eli Manning, was he better than some of the other quarterbacks like Ben Roethlisberger? Probably not.
Yeah.
Okay, who he was drafted with in the same class. But Eli Manning was a terrific player with terrific accomplishments.
And Jack, different teams in different situations. It's very hard to compare those things. So, Jack, we're going to take a quick official timeout here. We'll be back quick, folks. More sports on this side. Jack may have some more updates for you. And, of course, we got this day in history. So please stick around. We'll be right back after these few messages.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye, Dad.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah, 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I've made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's gonna be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he gonna know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
Good morning and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on live Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, the legendary boxing writer himself, the great Jack Hirsch. And Jack, we're going through some of your updates and bullet points and tidbits that you're bringing up, and really some interesting stuff out there that information that I makes me think, makes me ponder and think about, because a lot of these things that you're bringing up and that we bring up in the updates earlier, it gives us stuff to talk about with our listeners and our viewers about things that are always associated with certain points. I mean, what you said about the Hall of Fame was very interesting. I mean, the people who vote on Hall of Fame ballots, in a lot of cases, their identity is not disclosed, and we've had problems with some of the voting and why some people vote for certain people and not others, even when they're no-brainers. So if you got any more stuff, any more updates, Jack?
No, that's pretty much it. The updates, they come at us like all the time, and it's funny about sports, the four major sports. It's like they always jockey for position. It depends what goes on. Like we have the NBA All-Star game, and it's a rest for the players not playing in that game. In a way, it's a rest for us. We take 2-3 days off from NBA talk because the NBA All-Star game, it's basically meaningless. But that's another story for another time. And Major League Baseball, pretty soon we're really going to gear up for this opening day. In a couple of weeks, it's going to be, really coming upon us. And one thing about opening day, what makes it so wonderful, everyone starts off with a clean slate. Everyone's dreams are still intact. Okay? Right. Once you get off to that 1-11 start and you're a weak team, it's like bad news early in the year. But it's like everyone has a chance like early in the year. And we put so much emphasis on opening day. We're psyched. Our team loses 5-1. We start to worry. Never mind, they win the next 3. Conversely, they win opening day. We're smiling. It's going to be a great year. And then they get it shut out 4-0, the next game. Very so, the opening game, there's a certain magic in the opening game.
Well, Jack, I'm glad you brought that up. Because, we got to change the format of the show as the sports leave and come back. So, folks, every Wednesday, starting here pretty soon, we'll be giving you in-depth baseball coverage on Wednesday, as we do on Thursday with the hockey and a little bit of boxing with the Iceman, John Scully. And Friday we do our NBA review. So we will be having in-depth coverage of baseball in the locals anyway when it starts up here pretty soon. And I can't wait for that to happen.
I'm still smarting, Mac, from the trivia question. You know how much it bothered me in the intermission when you mentioned rookie. And I immediately think offense. And I said, wait a second. The Vikings didn't have a quarterback who would have won the Rookie of the Year award. And it wasn't Randy Moss. And I'm thinking, I don't know why Chuck Foreman, I'm thinking in terms of the greatest running back in Viking history. But in reality, and all due respect to Chuck Foreman, it was Adrian Peterson.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and some other reminders, folks, that if you're viewing or listening right now, we are on Northeast Streaming Sports, a network of 16 shows right now, Jack, and growing. You can find it at the Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook page. We got our own YouTube channel. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. And we're on a lot of different podcast places such as Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, Pandora. So if you miss any of the shows during the week, you can always listen to them. It'll sound just like a radio show. So that's out there. We do have a great website if you want to check it out. It's nessp.info. A lot of stories on some of the guests on the shows, and a lot of public relations updates, at least with the Giants and Yankees, since they share it to us through their communications department. So we have a lot of things going on, Jack, that are great for our show and great for the network. And hopefully you guys go over there and check it out, and check out that Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube channel.
We have that 5-hour draft special, Mac. But who's in charge of that 5-hour draft special? I want to know. Because I heard I was asked to go on. I agreed to go on. What, from 6 to 11? Now I hear no breaks. Are you kidding me? No breaks. I can't get up. I can't stretch. I can't have a bite to eat, a snack during that time. I've got to be there 5 hours in a row.
Well, thanks for bringing us up, Jack. We have a couple specials coming to Northeast Streaming Sports where we have the Final Four of the NCAA tournament that will be coming to Northeast Streaming Sports. And then we will have Draft Day from 6 folks to 11. That will probably cover the whole first round. We'll have somebody there live that will be reporting from there. Me and the host of TGI Sports, Keith Angle, are going to work that out. Right now, preliminary, it's going to be in TGI Sports. But I got a few thoughts on that I got to discuss with Keith, and we'll straighten that out in time for you all to know that we'll be having great guests on not only the NCAA Final Four, but also on Draft Day. So if the big networks are going to be doing it, Jack, but nobody can do it like Northeast Streaming Sports. So hopefully everybody comes over there and watches us do our thing, because we're going to have people live there, and we're going to have a lot of big guests for Draft Day. So, Jack, every week we go ahead and we do This Day in Sports History. This is where we take a look back at some of the great events that happened and the ramifications of those events, because, without the past, there's no present and there would be no future. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the topics, Jack, that I found on This Day in Sports History. In 1988, Jack, I'm going back a long time.
That's not that bad, Mac. Come on, you're not going back to 1888.
That's what I meant to say, Jack. We're going back to 1888.
Oh, I thought you said 1988.
I did. Misspoke, Jack. 1888. Heavyweight champion John L. Sullivan fights Charlie Mitchell in a 30-round draw, Jack.
I think it was a 39-round draw. I think you got the rounds wrong. And he knocked out Mitchell in a rematch in 3 rounds, okay? Right. But, John L. Sullivan was the last of the bare-knuckle champions. When he lost his heavyweight championship to Jim Corbett on September 21st, 1992 in New Orleans, that was the first time he wore gloves.
You mean?
And he got stopped by Corbett in the 21st round. And it created a heck of a buzz, because John L. Sullivan was nicknamed the Boston Strong Boy, and he was thought to be invincible. He was also called the Mighty John L. Sullivan. And the idea of him being defeated sent shockwaves throughout America. Truth of the matter is, John L. was out of condition. He was a heavy drinker. Jim Corbett was a slim bank teller from San Francisco. And Jim Corbett was considered the father of modern boxing at that time. He was a Muhammad Ali type with box, move in and out. And the mighty John L. Sullivan was a wild swinger who got winded, and Corbett knocked him out.
Well, first of all, Jack, as I misspoke, you said in 19 instead of 18, whatever the year was, that gentleman Jim Corbett won the championship.
Oh, in 1892.
Right.
That's
so
in 1992.
Yes, you did. That's my fault.
1892.
1988.
But 21st, 1892.
Right. So
New Orleans.
What was interesting about those days to me, Jack, was that John L. Sullivan would take a train to each town and challenge the baddest guy in the town to a boxing match. Instead of, the promoter the way it's today, he actually rode a train and did that and went from town to town. I mean, talk about your promotions, Jack. I mean,
John L. Sullivan would walk into saloons and say, I can lick any SOB in the house. And there would be some takers, they'd have the bar fights. And as legend has it, John L. would always knock him out and win and collect the loot. Imagine doing that today. A guy going into a bar, but they loved it. I mean, John L. was an American hero at the time, and he's actually the first recognized world heavyweight champion. We don't count the bare knucklers before him, even though, John L. Sullivan was a bare knuckle champion. He's still, he lost his title with gloves on. He had a 75-round fight where he knocked out a fighter named Jay Kilran. Kilran basically quit. Imagine that, 75 rounds. But in those days, it was a little different. They wrestled a lot in the clinches. Not that they don't do it today, but wrestling was a big part of the attack. They wrestle inside, and if you threw a guy down to the ground, the round would automatically end. So it wasn't legitimate 3-minute rounds. But with that said, the old timers were used to fighting the longer distances in their fights than the guys do today. They were tough men back then.
Yeah, I saw an old film clip of John L. Sullivan. His workout was lifting a beer keg over his head. He was like, he was like pressing the beer keg, which was pretty amusing. In 1941, Dodger GM Lee MacPhail predicts that every player will be wearing batting helmets. Now, what this leads me to assume is that players weren't wearing batting helmets before that time, and that's not too long ago, Jack.
They weren't. What's amazing in the history of baseball, the whole history, only one player has died as a result of getting beamed by a pitch. I think the name was Ray Chapman. Was it in the 1920s or something? I don't have the exact date. I'm estimating. I'm close, if not there completely. And it was thought to be wimpish to wear batting helmets. You want to know something? Even in the 1970s, hockey players were resisting wearing helmets because it was supposed to be a sign of weakness. Now it's mandatory. Right. Goalies, for the most part, weren't wearing masks because they thought, well, it could block their vision. It could be a sign of weakness. And you think how ludicrous that is, how crazy that is now. And it was made mandatory. I mean, it had to be made mandatory, just like with people, drivers with seatbelts, who didn't want to wear seatbelts because they thought it was too confining. I mean, it's insane not, to do things like that. You talk about sports safety. Imagine that. He's predicting everyone's going to wear batting helmets. I'll tell you, Tom Seaver, when he was at his peak pitching for the Mets, and the highest paid player was making $100,000 a year. I think Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, whatever. Tom Seaver made the bold prediction on Kiner's Corner. He said, someday we're going to have a $200,000 a year ball player.
Yeah, right.
That was his prediction. And now, in this day and age, you can't give a guy $200,000 because it's far below the league minimum that they're required to give.
Right. And I know when I came up through the baseball from Little League all the way up into the senior leagues, the only thing bothering me about a batting helmet is that sometimes, it blocked your vision. And of course, they've made a lot of improvements since when I played. But I can't imagine standing in there with a guy throwing 80 miles an hour. I mean, I can't imagine the chutzpah to stand in there and not get hit by a ball. So that means all these great players, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Ted Williams to a point. No, not Ted Williams. That might be a little bit before Ted Williams. No, it was Ted Williams. Didn't have batting helmets on, Jack?
Let me tell you, let me go a step further, Mac. God forbid another player gets beamed and they, perish. It makes me, I hate mentioning that. If anything, I think the batting helmet should be updated to be safe. It should be more like a football helmet that really protects the batter, where he can get up and he can feel safe. Even if he gets hit in the head, he'll get buzzed. Don't misunderstand me, but it's not going to kill him. It is so dangerous to fear of getting up there and having a pitch whiz by your head. It would scare the heck out of me. A couple of years ago, I went to a Long Island Duck baseball game, the Long Island Ducks in the independent game. My buddy got tickets right on top of the dugout, the third base dugout. Every time a left-handed batter got up, I was nervous that he was going to carry him a hard foul ball that was going to come at us, and my hands were up in a defensive position every time the batter got up. Every time. So I could imagine, being at the plate, and especially, I heard David Wright had a hard time getting over it after he got buzzed. Some players are never the same. What scares me too, Mac, are baseball pitchers who are exposed to line drives coming back at them. The Cleveland Indians had a pitcher many decades ago named Herb Score.
Right.
He got hit in the head by a line drive, hit back to him. He was never the same pitcher again. It is scary. But in that case with the pitcher, I don't know is there much you can do about it, but I can see the day coming, Mac, okay, where the pitcher has some type of light headgear on to just protect him. And what about our coaches at first to third base? I mean, they should have a glove on. What are we going to do? Are we going to wait till someone gets killed? Mac, people might laugh at my ideas. They might claim it's wimpish. But I can guarantee you, if someone gets killed, all of a sudden Major League Baseball is going to make these adjustments. And I say, let's make the adjustments before someone gets hurt so they don't get hurt.
Well, Jack, again, maybe you're correct, but, to change something traditionally is very hard to do. And, you got so many people throwing 100 miles an hour now that, even with that helmet, it hurts. So, but
they don't get killed.
It's very true. It's very true. I remember going to my first, I've talked about it before, going to my first baseball game, the Red Sox and Yankees. We were sitting right behind the Yankee dugout, and a foul ball came. Everybody ducked in the front row. We were fast enough to duck. The woman behind us wasn't fast enough, and she had a black eye like you wouldn't believe because she got hit right in the eye with the baseball. I wasn't smart enough. I was young to put my hand up and maybe catch that ball. But anyway, there's a lot of relevance to what you're saying, Jack. I just think that, once you start taking away from the game in some aspects, like the netting and stuff like that, maybe I'm old-fashioned, maybe I'm old school, maybe I'm a little nutty, but I don't like it that much. So, I will
admit this. I went last year to a Yankee Marlin exhibition game in Florida in the Marlin home park, and they had the netting that extended all the way down the third base line. It bothered me as a spectator to watch it. It did bother me where I was at. But the season before that, I went to Port St. Lucie. I saw the Mets and the Nationals in an exhibition game. And I sat directly behind home plate, and they had the netting, and it was fine. At certain angles, it could, be a little annoying. But, at what price? Kids come to the games. And so,
You know what I thought, Jack? Why don't they do what hockey does and have that plexiglass up so it doesn't distract your view and you're not trying to look through a web? And I thought, why do a netting? Why not do something like that? Except it might ricochet off and hit some players. So, but I always thought, why don't they do something like that? So in 1963, Jack, Pete Rose makes his debut in spring training. We all know the story of Pete Rose. We know what he did. We know he's suspended from baseball. We know he's not in the Hall of Fame, even though his stats and his playing days surely reflect he should be in the Hall of Fame. I guess this will always be a point that's debated and argued, and until Major League Baseball eventually puts him in, which hopefully one day, Jack, they do.
It's ludicrous that Pete Rose isn't in the Hall of Fame. It's absolutely ludicrous. Talk about the moral issues, the this or that, and let's do it retroactive. I mean, and look at some of the Hall of Famers, the things that they could have been involved in. But that's another issue in itself. When Pete Rose came up in 1963 to the Cincinnati Reds, he was a great player off the bat, won the Rookie of the Year award. He actually edged out another second baseman, Ron Hunt, of the New York Mets. And the New York Mets was so pathetic in the early years. And Ron Hunt came to the Mets in their second year of existence. And he was one of the few bright spots on, those Met teams, a guy who actually was a good player for a pathetic team.
Yeah. You know what I think is going to happen, Jack? After Pete Rose passes away, I think they'll put him in the Hall of Fame, and that's a shame. But
Don't be so sure. Shoeless Joe Jackson isn't in.
Yeah.
Don't be so sure.
Very true. Very true. In 1984, heavyweight Tim Witherspoon knocks out Greg Page. Now, growing up, I remember Tim Witherspoon, Jack. Was he a real good fighter? Was he a great fighter? Or just...
He was a very good fighter who maybe could have been a great fighter. He underachieved. He didn't train that hard. You know what you made me think of, Mac? I'm friends with the guy who defeated Tim Witherspoon to win his World Boxing Council heavyweight title. That's Pinklin Thomas. I've been thinking of giving Pinklin a call to get him on this show. He could talk about the night he beat Tim Witherspoon for the title. But Tim Witherspoon scored some great wins. He knocked out Frank Bruno in England. Bernard Fernandez, the great Philadelphia boxing writer and Hall of Famer who we had on this show, said it best about Tim Witherspoon. He wasn't all he could be. Yeah. That's the best way of describing him. He's not in the International Hall of Fame. He comes a little short, and like we were talking about other athletes before, maybe he gets in someday, but he's a little short, just didn't put everything into the sport the way he should have.
Why do you think they do that, Jack? I mean, here's your chance for almost immortality, a chance for you to be the greatest of the great, and for some reason or another, you just don't put it together. I mean,
he had promotional difficulties with Don King. He later sued Don King and got a decent settlement for the time. And, some guys don't have that drive. I don't understand that in certain athletes, especially boxers, who have the ability to make impact money that's going to make them secure the rest of their life. I think to myself, put a few years into it. Put everything you have into it the next few years. Collect your money. Then retire, and you're on easy street. Yeah. But they still can't do that. I mean, it's hard to understand sometimes.
That goes for a lot of athletes. So, Jack, tomorrow we have, speaking of boxing, we have the Iceman John Scully is scheduled to join us, and also our NHL update with Carter B. Does a great job on the NHL, analyzing it and talking about the locals. So, folks, thanks for joining us on our Wednesday back from the Monday and Tuesday we take off, Jack. That's where we get recharged, do all our, all our studying and our investigation and all our stuff we have to do to get ready.
They don't pay us enough to work Mondays and Tuesdays, Mac. You're holding out for a better deal.
That's true. We definitely are trying to get our contracts a little bit.
I want my contract renegotiated.
Yes,
I want a renegotiation.
Me too, Jack. And folks, again, thank you for tuning in. Please check us out on the Mac Sports Facebook page, Northeast Streaming Sports Facebook page, on Northeast Streaming Sports YouTube and Twitch and Twitter, and even on Instagram. Jack, we're on there too. Again, as I said, tomorrow we have a big show. We do have the draft day coming up, a big event that we'll both be at. And, Jack, any other thoughts before we go ahead and we take off and leave for today?
No, that's basically, you know what I did last Monday night? I couldn't help myself. In the evening, 50th anniversary of the Ali Frazier fight, I watched the fight again as it took place in the movie theaters, the closed circuit thing, to take it in. Wow, what a magical night, 50 years And we had a great show again last Sunday. I urge everyone to catch the replay. We had the best 50th anniversary show anywhere.
Oh, a great point, Jack. And I'll tell you, every once in a while, I go back and I just watch that fight because that's what boxing is all about, that fight. Great, both champions, both fighting their hearts out, and one had to come up on top. And in that case, it was Frazier. But Ali won the next two, so the rivalry was unbelievable. Folks, again, thanks for hanging out with us this Wednesday. We'll be back tomorrow, same time.